Trap games can derail a promising football season, and Iowa football has a big trap game on the schedule in 2025.
You are Locked On Hawkeyes, your daily podcast on the Iowa Hawkeyes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, welcome in. I'm Trent Condon, and this is the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast. I've been covering the Hawkeyes for over 20 years in the state of Iowa, including currently on the Iowa Sports Radio Network. We have stations in Iowa City, the Quad Cities, Cedar Rapids, Sioux City, along with our flagship station, 106.3 KXNO in Des Moines. You can hear me weekdays from noon to 2 talking the world of sports. Today's episode of Locked On Hawkeyes is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Iowa women's basketball with the media availability today. We'll talk a little bit about the upcoming team and how it's going to be a different look, but maybe more upside with this women's basketball team. We'll also be joined by David Eicholt from Hawkeye Insider, a look at the Hawkeyes and what they have on the football field. We'll talk some basketball with him, both on the men's and the women's side, and get his perspective on the commitment of Trey Thompson. But we begin today with Iowa football and a look to a season that certainly has promise. Expectations at the betting shops, 6.5, 7.5 wins. I think most of us anticipate, if you're a Hawkeye fan, they're going to be north of those numbers, but it is a season that there's going to be a lot of those coin flip games. It's going to come down to a possession, a play. There's a whole lot of them on the schedule that you look at and make a whole lot of sense. But today, I want to talk about a trap game and a game on the schedule that hasn't come up often as it pertains to maybe a difficult spot, but could be tricky for Iowa. So as you go through the schedule, obviously you look at the non-conference games, starting with week 1 against Albany. Okay. The Iowa State game, Iowa, what they've been able to do recently at Jack Trice Stadium, haven't lost in that building since 2011, if memory serves. You have that component to it. Going to be a difficult game. Iowa State is a slight favorite currently there. I believe FanDuel has the Cyclones favored by 2.5 points in that football game. And then the UMass game. So that's a non-conference. And the Iowa State game, I mean, that's not a trap game. I don't think Albany or UMass certainly would be considered. But as you go through the Big Ten slate and you look through, trying to find that tricky spot, that one that very well could be the one that makes the difference between this Iowa being a contender, having important games come November. What could derail those hopes? And I kept coming back to one game because I look at rivalry games. It's very rare that those games can be considered a trap game on your schedule. Obviously, there's going to be a ton surrounding the matchups when Penn State comes to town, when Oregon makes their way into Kinnick Stadium. And those are going to be monsters. Going out to USC and Kirk Ferentz's inability to win games on the West Coast during the regular season, as he never has, though he hasn't had many opportunities throughout his career in the regular season, has the one bowl win in the Holiday Bowl against USC, but even that was a neutral site game, so it does not have a true road victory west of Lincoln, Nebraska. So that really breaks it down to just a couple of games. And the one that I keep coming back to is Rutgers. So that is penned to be a Friday night game. That will be a short week. The good news about the short week, that is also something I think at times you look at. You're looking at those situational spots, those spots that can be tricky for football teams. And short weeks, a lot of times, that is one that you look at. But because Iowa has been doing this now for so long, because of the Black Friday game, because they've been playing that game now for, a decade, because of that, and Kirk Ferentz and the coaching staff's ability and the understanding of that game, the success that they've had in that football game, that leads me not to be as concerned about this short week angle. But more than anything, it's just Rutgers. On tap after that, it's Indiana. The Hoosiers very well could be undefeated if they could get past Illinois going into that game against Iowa at Kinnick Stadium. Short week. You play a night game the week previous also in that game against UMass. That should be a laugher. Iowa should cruise in that football game. Still, a night game, then a short week. But this Rutgers team, Greg Schiano, he's done a nice job. Last year, bowl eligible. They fell in the Guaranteed Rate Bowl, 44-41, just a great game against Kansas State. You look at what they did a season ago. They went to Virginia Tech and won. They beat Washington early in the season. Speaking of Friday night games, that was a Friday night game that they did. After a 4-game losing streak, then they bounced back and win 3 out of 4 down the stretch, including beating Minnesota, going on the road, beating Maryland. And then they wrapped up the season with their most impressive performance, and that was absolutely throttling Michigan State in East Lansing, something we know certainly the Hawkeyes didn't do a year ago. Now, they return some starters from last season. Cal McManus will be back at the quarterback spot, and though I'm no fan of him overall, still guy with a ton of experience, has played a ton of football in the Big Ten, starting at Minnesota and now at Rutgers. They bring back a bunch of offensive linemen with starting experience from a year ago, 4 offensive line starters. That's a great building block that they have. I like wide receiver Ian Strong. They have a lot to replace on the defensive side of the football, but this could be a team that we're looking at that just has the potential to sneak up. Now, Iowa's had success against Rutgers, and maybe that's a reason that I think some people are overlooking. But that's the one more than anything that I keep coming back to. If there's going to be that tricky game, it's that matchup against Rutgers, 4th week of the season, Friday night matchup against the Scarlet Knights. You're always digging. You're always looking for something different, and that's just one I think we need to spotlight a little bit more. After that, it's Indiana. And if Iowa gets past that, and I think there is a real possibility that Iowa starts the season 5-0. Mentioned slight underdog against Iowa State, but a ton of success with Jack Trice. Get by the tricky Rutgers game, and then Indiana. And as you heard, my conversation a week ago with Jacob Goins from Locked On Hoosiers, they have big expectations over there, but it happens more often than not. Those teams that make the big jump forward in a year, there's regression. And I think the Hoosiers are definitely a regression candidate coming up this year. After that, it's a road trip to Wisconsin, and then the biggies. Penn State, Minnesota, Oregon, all at Kinnick Stadium over a 4-week span. Those 3 games very well could dictate the season. But you got to get there first. And you got to get there at minimum with 1 loss, hopefully undefeated. And then you play things out from there, including that road trip out to USC, Michigan State at home, and then wrapping up this year in Lincoln on Black Friday against the Huskers. We got a lot more football to get into. David Eicholt is going to join us from HawkeyeInsider.com. We're going to get his thoughts on some question marks for Iowa football, plus plenty of Iowa basketball, men's and women's, the commitment of Trey Thompson, and some women's basketball media availability. We'll get into all that with David Eicholt. He joins us next on the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast. Have you ever decided at the last minute to head to a ball game with friends or family? Maybe it's game day and you suddenly realize you want to be in the stands. That's exactly where Gametime comes in. It's the easiest way to grab last-minute tickets without the stress. With the money you save on tickets, you can splurge on food, drinks, merch, even invite a bigger group to come with you. Gametime makes it all possible. Gametime makes buying tickets fast and simple. Prices on the app actually drop the closer you get to first pitch. They got incredible last-minute deals, clear seat views, and lowest price guarantee to take the worry out of buying tickets. Gametime is the official ticketing partner of Locked On MLB and make it easy to browse the app for an exciting baseball game, including coming up this week, my Twins, out of your Cubs, facing off in Target Field. Seat views right on the app before you buy. Know exactly where you're going to be in Target Field or whatever stadium you're going to be at. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCollege, LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed.
David Eicholt, his site at 24/7 Sports, Hawkeye Insider. I think they got better. Another name in the fold, a 3-headed monster over there, David Eicholt, as Elliot Clough joins the firm. How are you?
Doing well. I appreciate you bringing that back up. Elliot's done a heck of a job already, and I never felt better about the direction of the site. And we got a lot of big plans coming around. And of course, with Big Ten Media Days here in a couple weeks.
Yeah,
we're in Las Vegas.
Absolutely. We're all looking forward to that. Are you? So what day will you get there?
I'll be there the 23rd, the morning of. I got an early flight out of Des Moines. Elliot's going to join me as well. Sean's going to go on vacation, and he deserves it after the transfer portal and the Ben McCollum stuff. He's been all over it, so I'm happy for him.
Well, let's start. Since you brought up McCollum, you got another addition to the roster, a reclassification. Beat a bunch of big-name schools for the services of Trey Thompson. Your thoughts on what they were able to do this late and what this means for McCollum's 25-26 squad?
Yeah, I mean, it's a massive get, guys. I mean, you talk about a guy who's a perfect fit for McCollum's system on offense and defense. He's a guy that I think it'll be really good for him to learn under Alvaro Folgueras, because I think their games are relatively similar. I do think Folgueras is a little bit longer. I think Thompson's probably a little bit more quicker, but they both can shoot the threes. They're both really good jump shooters. They can do a variety of different things. But you got to tip your cap to McCollum here, man, because Purdue has been the long favorite for Thompson, and they put a lot of resources into recruiting him. Alabama offered him a scholarship. UConn offered him a scholarship. So for McCollum to basically start the relationship with Thompson maybe 2 or 3 months ago, and to get him to not just commit, but to reclassify. And from everything I've been told, Thompson explored the idea of reclassifying. It wasn't something McCollum and the Iowa staff really forced him to do or asked him to do. After visiting Iowa, they really started to dive deep into kind of what he wanted to do, and it was possible for him to reclassify. He made a few calls, and Iowa said, absolutely, we'll take you right now. We have a role for you. And the rest is history. But there's no doubt that I think it's a huge win for Luke Barnwell, who's going to be, I think, one of the better recruiting assistant guys in the Big Ten, and for McCollum to make a splash, not just in the portal, but in the high school rankings for a guy who had a lot of offers from some really, really good schools. So he probably won't start, but I do see him as kind of being that rotational piece for next year.
12, 15 minutes a game, something like that. Is that kind of what you're looking at in terms of minutes for him here in season number 1?
It's interesting, Trent, because we've tried to break down the minutes, and the only thing that I keep coming back to is Bennett Sturts is getting 38 on minimum ball, right? That seems to be about the only guarantee for me, because maybe Folgueras could go about 28 to 30. But I do believe that we're going to see about 8 or 9 different guys, because everything I've heard about Tate Sage, I think it's going to be hard to kind of keep him off the floor. And that wasn't something I anticipated if you would have asked me about 5 weeks ago. But the open practice that we got to see, he was arguably the second best player.
Wow.
Seriously, on the team for that practice,
right,
which again, I think is very, very important to mention. But maybe I would say right now 15 to 17, because I just think you look at the versatility. I think you look at the rebounding. I think the big thing for Thompson is, can he adjust to the physicality of the Big Ten and stay out of foul trouble?
Mm-hmm. That's fascinating about Sage, because wasn't he like the last one to commit?
He was, and we were kind of waiting, because it felt like, well, after decommitting from Drake, he was just going to follow him. We waited and waited, and there wasn't a whole lot there.
They did string him out, though. That's one thing. So I guess, are they done now as far as a summer practice? They started earlier than anybody else. I want to say June 1st, they were on the floor. Are they finished now, David?
Yeah, I think they're doing a couple different things. And it's worth noting, too, like, remember, Folgueras was the guy who got to campus early and was starting to learn the system, and they just kind of moved his things up, because he is going to be competing at I believe, the under-20 AmeriCup for the FIBA European Cup for the under-20, so he's going to get some good experience there. I have not completely clocked into if they're done, but I do know that we have at least one more media availability with the men's team. I believe that's going to be July 22nd, so that'll probably answer that last week. And I think right when the football kind of fall camp starts up, which is going to be near the end of July, I think that's when the basketball team will get their couple weeks off.
Speaking of basketball, women's media availability for you guys on Tuesday, earlier today. Take us in a little bit to what you saw, and boy, the speculation continues. Addy Deal. I was trying to maybe temper expectations. Look, Caitlin Clark is once in a generation, and it's not to say that she's going to be Caitlin Clark, but boy, it sounds like Addy Deal is going to be incredibly hard to keep off the floor.
I think you have to throw in the starting lineup, Trent, just from everything I've seen. I mean, yeah. I mean, she's that skilled, man. It was interesting. I was sitting with Chad Leisco, the Des Moines Register, last couple of practices we've been able to get. It took Addy Deal more than 35 minutes to miss more than 2 shots. Look, I get they're not doing live 5-on-5, but they're doing drill work. She's pulling up from mid-range. She's pulling up fairly from deep from three-point range beyond the line. She's hitting it. Not quite Caitlin Clark range, but that's kind of impossible to expect out of anyone, right? Yeah. But what she's been able to do early on, it's pretty spectacular. But I will say I do not envy Jan Jensen and her staff, because when you talk about that off-guard spot or that 3 spot, you have 3 very capable people. I mean, you look at 4. Look at Addy Deal. You look at, Emily Rodriguez, who I don't think people are talking enough about. I'm really intrigued by her game, the UCF transfer. Then you have Taylor McCabe and Kylie Feuerbach. Really don't know how you keep Kylie Feuerbach out of the starting lineup with the way that she's been able to play defense. if her three-point shot continues on the upward trajectory, she could be that. Taylor McCabe is probably one of the best shooters in the country. I do think that there are some question marks about the starting point guard spot. We know Chit Chat Wright, the Georgia Tech transfer, is likely to be able to nab that. What's funny too is she got the name Chit Chat back when she was in her old AAU days when she was younger, and they nicknamed her Chit Chat because she didn't like to talk to anybody.
That's why.
And it just,
awesome.
and it just has sort of stuck. But it's kind of a perfect nickname though too. But I do think there are some question marks with this team. But when you talk about that 2 to 3 spot, I haven't even mentioned Taylor Stremlow yet, and I think you're talking about her as one of the more important leaders on this team, especially vocally. They have an abundance of riches, but I'm very interested to see how they kind of piece things together, because I think there's a variety of different ways to go. But with that being said, man, like Addy Deal, I don't know how high her ceiling is, guys, but she has one of the safest floors I've ever seen, because she's good at about everything. I don't know how many elite traits she has that'll dictate her ceiling, but she's a really, really, really good basketball
So like
player.
a Lucy Olsen, maybe?
I think that would be a very good ceiling. Is a Lucy Olsen, but I will say probably it's a little bit more consistent with three-point shot than Lucy. Maybe not quite the passer Lucy was, but she might be able to make up from that from three-point range.
Is Stulke back yet?
Stulke is not back yet. I do think she's going to be with the team later this week. I'm sure she probably needs a couple of days to get used to the jet lag and adjust back to that schedule. But when you bring back a gold medal, Ken, I think a couple perks, right?
Absolutely.
I want to shift over to football before we kind of start to get ready for 2 weeks away from Vegas. Do want to get your perspective. Darian Jones, the latest recruit that Iowa got, family connection with Dallas, who we got to know with one of the gambling contests that we did a while back. Good guy. He went to Iowa, the middle brother at Nebraska, currently on the football team, and now here's the youngest that is going to be a Hawkeye. Just a really fun story, and it's always good to nab a guy out of Omaha that Nebraska wants.
Yeah, I mean, I really love his ceiling. I think he's a fringe kind of 4-star talent. He's a guy who grew up dreaming of playing for Iowa. I'm sure, I don't know if you've seen it, Trent or Ken, but Dallas has tweeted out some pictures back when they were kids. And Darian's all in Iowa gear, and it's like, I was born to be a Hawkeye. I mean, a lot of really, really cool stuff. But Phil Parker and LeVar Woods really crushed this recruitment. I think there was a meeting he had one-on-one with Phil Parker where they were breaking down his film for about 45 minutes about how he would really become entrenched in that defense. And he told us that's exactly when the deal was sealed for him. Like, he committed on the spot. They all started celebrating. So he's been a silent commit for a few weeks, but it's a really, really cool story. And again, you're right, man. I know Nebraska's pretty happy about some of the cornerback commits that they got, but for as much as Nebraska loves to not keep in their hometown talent, to really grab, I think, one of the higher ceiling guys from that state, especially with the pressure of staying in Nebraska. As a Nebraska alum, I know, roll your eyes in the back of your head, I can tell you there is so much pressure to stay in the state to go play for Nebraska. I mean, you can equate it to, like, if you're from, Eastern Iowa, a lot of pressure to become a Hawkeye, right? When you're in the Des Moines area, it's kind of split more between Iowa and Iowa State. There's a lot of pressure to stay home and represent. So for him to kind of avert all that pressure, really understand the process, go through it, and to come up with a spot that he feels comfortable in, you have to tip your cap off to him.
I want to ask you about Max Llewellyn, because he's starting to get some draft buzz around his name. What kind of year do we expect from him? And does he look like a pro to either of you? I mean, he certainly flashed.
I think that's the big thing for me, man. Is how consistent can he be? I started my breakout series, about 5 weeks ago. He was the first guy listed, Ken. I mean, you just look at that. He has such violent hands, that swim move he has. We saw the spin move he put on display a couple times. I do think he has to be a little bit more aware of how to stop the run and to stop the run. But when you talk about a guy, if you say, hey, pin your ears back, go get the quarterback, he has great athleticism. He has really solid straight line speed. He can do a variety of different things. He's a guy to me that's capable of getting 8.5 to up to 10 sacks this season. I'm not going to say that he's going to do it, but if you just look at the flashes he's had and kind of his journey throughout his entire football career, because remember, if you look back to his freshman and sophomore year of high school, he had to put on another 45, 50 pounds just to really play that defensive line. He was able to do that. So I'm looking at that kind of similar story to happen in his college career, obviously not with the weight game, but just as far as putting his game together. He understands it now. We know there's going to be a rotation of, defensive linemen with Jay Neiman and Kelvin Bell with what they've been able to do. I'm not going to be surprised if they go 9 to 10 deep. I think they're certainly capable of that, but Llewellyn's the guy I think it's going to be really difficult to kind of take off. And I think the same way about Aaron Graves as well, but I'm very, very excited about Llewellyn. I do think he's going to end up being drafted.
So I want to go to the tight end position. We haven't talked a ton about it. Addison Estranga has been a part of the program, the more of that kind of traditional inline type of tight end, or showing an ability to go down the field. But out of that young group, you bring in 3 guys this year: Mason Woods, Thomas Meyer, Eli Johnson. Thomas Meyer's a guy I go to. It's not very often that Miami and Texas A&M are hanging out at Clear Lake looking at a football prospect, but that's the case here. Could Meyer be a guy, not a huge role by any means, but we see him out there maybe for the 4 games, still maintain that redshirt status? Does Meyer have that kind of upside with 2 entrenched guys in front of him with Estranga and Ortworth?
I think so. And Trent, I got to tell you, I've been on this beat since 2018. I followed Iowa football most of my life. And I obviously, there's so much respect for the tight end tradition that Iowa has. Have you ever seen a season with this much question marks around the tight end?
Yeah. Iowa, fair point.
I think Addison Estranga, we've seen him flash. We've heard all the buzz about Zach Ortworth. But when I'm talking about proven production, we just really don't see a guy this year. And again, you don't need to have that guy when you're trying to get the ball more to wide receivers and you have, Caleb Johnson in your backfield. I'm pretty sure you don't want to take touches away from him, right? But Caleb Johnson's gone. I think there's definitely a number of guys that can step up to the plate, but I think this is going to be a huge year for Abdul Hodge. I mean, I'm not saying as far as a job security thing, but to really kind of solidify his stamp as kind of being that tight end whisperer, right? These guys have played a lot of football. It's time to piece it together. But I got to tell you, of every position on this roster, at least on offense, I got the most question marks about the tight end. I think I know what I'm going to get out of everyone else. And I cannot remember a year ever where I've sat back and said that.
And that preceded you, 2018, when you joined the beat. Think of the list, but there's some questions there this year. I never thought about it that way. David Eicholt, well done. What about on the defensive side of the ball, as far as questions go for you? Biggest one would be?
I think we know what we're going to get out of the secondary. Obviously, I love Cohen Entringer being into that starting lineup and opposite safety side of Xavier Wampa. I do think we need to see a cornerback 1 emerge. Do they have a guy on the roster that can do that? I don't know. I got to tell you, man, it's the linebackers.
Yeah.
And I think you have to give a lot of respect to them. They've waited their turn. Teammates are talking very highly about them, but I go back to the same thing as the tight ends. How much proven production is there? We know that they've gotten a ton of reps in the spring because that's when they like to rest Jay Higgins and senior sis and Nick Jackson by that point. That guy has been around a time or 2 in college football. I call him the Jordan Bohannon of college football. But I also think like Carson Schroer, we've heard a lot of really good things about. Jane Harrell, he obviously got some time in that UCLA game. We've heard a lot about Zach Lutmer. We've seen some athletic plays from Zach Lutmer in that cash spot. But is there a guy that can go in there and get 90-plus tackles, can be that guy that can go out there and make a big-time play? They've had 3 at all 3 linebacker spots throughout the past couple of years. This year, that's going to be the first thing I look for. Can they protect over the middle, or they get let tight ends go crazy? Can they protect some of these in routes that just end up going from 7 to 8 yard gains into 25 to 30, right? I think that's going to be a big, big deal and something that opposing offenses are really going to channel in on early and test them.
You mentioned Carson Shire. It feels like we've been hearing about this guy for 5 years. And I got some friends from the Iowa Falls area. That's where he grew up. So heard about this kid going back to high school. What we've always heard about him, incredible athlete, can
Carson
run.
with a K.
Yes, Carson with the K. Shire, spelled Sharar. Yeah, trying to figure that one out. Yeah. But he's been banged up throughout the course of his career. Do we know what those injuries were? It just feels like this, he's hurt again. And that's kind of been the end game for it. Do we know what kind of injuries he's dealt with throughout the course of his career?
That's kind of what I've been told when I've talked to sources, because you also need to understand, I'm sure the same sources have told you, he's the guy that just says he isn't hurt. Like, that's just the way he's wired. Again, the second Jordan Bohannon reference I'll make, and that's something I definitely did not anticipate when we started this segment, was if you ask him what his injuries are, I'm fine. I don't know what you're talking about. Like, that's exactly the way that he is sort of wired too. So I probably need to dive a little bit deeper into that. I'm sure we'll be able to hear during media days. Maybe he'll let down his guard a little bit. But at the same time, too, there are a couple of guys I'm going to keep in mind that just early names, right? What about Derek Weiskopf? What about that linebacker class that has sort of come in behind them? What about Preston Reeves? I mean, they have guys behind them that I do think, despite being younger, athletically and upside-wise, I think they're going to be able to push some of these guys. Now, I'm not saying they're ever going to start over Jane Harrell or Zach Lutmer or, whoever else may enter the fold, or Carson, but there's going to be some good competition in that room. So I do know Seth Wallace is pretty confident about the future in his room. So it'll definitely be interesting. I think fall camps could be a lot of fun, and I will have my calendar circled whenever they have that kids day, because my eyes will be glued on that linebacker unit.
Good stuff, David Eicholt. Anything else, Trent Condon? Good stuff, David. Appreciate what you do for us. Congrats on the addition over there at 24/7 Sports, HawkeyeInsider.com. David, thank you. We'll see you in Vegas.
Yeah, I can't wait to see you guys in Vegas. Take care.
Yep, good to talk to you. David Eicholt, 24/7 Sports. We check in on the Hawkeyes.
Good stuff as always from David. Appreciate his time as we talk a lot of different topics on the Hawkeyes. And that's right, we are 2 weeks away from Big Ten football media days. Iowa will be on the podium, and we'll get to hear from the players that are making their way out there, along with Kirk Ferentz. That will be on Thursday, the 24th. I will be there starting on Monday. We'll have live shows each and every day from Big Ten football media days for you here on Locked On Hawkeyes. We continue. We talk some women's basketball with David Eicholt. Let's dive a little bit deeper. The Addy Deal hype is continuing. We'll talk about that as we continue Locked On Hawkeyes. Trent Condon back with you one final time on the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast. Thanks for being with us and making Locked On Hawkeyes your first listen every day. Big thank you to everydayers with us each and every day. Couldn't do it without you. If you're watching on YouTube, hit subscribe. If you're listening on the podcast side, 5-star reviews all helps us get in front of more Hawkeye fans. So women's availability today here, heard from a number of the different Hawkeye players. One of the more interesting things, and David brought this up, is what we're going to see from Kylie Feuerbach. The decision of coming back for a final 6th season of eligibility, for her to come back, what we saw from her on the defensive end of the floor. But I look at it this way. If Addy Deal is too good to keep off the floor, and she is not the ball handler that Caitlin Clark was and is, she is more of that 2-guard type, and though she'll handle the ball, and maybe will develop into that kind of player. And with Chit Chat coming in, and Chit Chat Wright, who is a point guard, what does that mean for Feuerbach? Because also in the mix is Emily Rodriguez. And as she gets more comfortable with her size and versatility, does it lead to a little bit of a squeeze? Now, when we're talking late game situations, and we'll see as a freshman what Addy Deal is defensively, and there can be those substitutions that you make, but that is one thing that I'm kind of wondering about, is those minutes and how it's going to be divvied up. Taylor McCabe, we know what a tremendous shooter that she is. And I think we saw more versatility from her game a year ago, expanding upon that and becoming more than just a shooter. I think they're going to need that. But I'll tell you, this Addy Deal hype just continues to build more and more. As I said with David, it was something I was trying to maybe temper expectations for some people out there, just expecting this to be Caitlin Clark 2.0. And that's unfair, and unfair expectations for anybody. But boy, you just hear more and more things about her. The way that she carries herself, the confidence, the swagger, she has everything that you're looking for. Going to be a fun season, and going to be a different look of season. We talked about Hannah Stolke coming off the gold medal, and what she's going to be now at that power forward position. If she can take a stranglehold on that, what that's going to mean. Going to be an exciting year on the hardwood, both men's and women's. And that is a good thing, no doubt. But we have football to get to before that. We got you covered each and every day here on Locked On Hawkeyes. Plenty more from that front. We'll talk more football today. We talk some trap games, and EA Sports coming out with year number 2 of the new college football game after the long hiatus. It is back. How do the Hawkeyes rank? We'll talk about that tomorrow on the show. Your team every day. That's what we do here on the Locked On Network. And thanks for making Locked On Hawkeyes your first listen today. For your second listen, make sure you check out the Portal Show. Brian Smith has the latest rumors, portal entries, and signings, all things recruiting as well. Be the most informed fan on the rapid changes to the college football landscape. Find the Portal on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Thanks for being with us as always. We'll talk to you again tomorrow. Until then, go Hawks.